Now, why this is such an important topic for me is because I've gone through a major burnout. It was really the lowest part of my life. It was a turning point in my life. And so I have firsthand experience. I didn't even know it was burnout. And I didn't even begin to realize that it was connected to my own complex trauma. It took me years to be able to figure that out. And once I began to see it, it was like, wow, it all makes sense. It might be helpful for you to make a distinction into kind of two types of burnout. They're connected, but sometimes we see the one before we see the other. And that is emotional burnout and physical burnout. So just because so many people don't even know that they're burning out and don't know how to detect the warning signs that they're burning out or the indicators that they have burned out, let me just walk through a bunch of symptoms that you might have that are indicating you're on your way to burnout or you have burned out. And you can just go through these. And if you have a lot of these true of you, then you need to be looking at the possibility that you're on your way to burnout or you have burned out. So physical symptoms, persistent tiredness. Even after a good night's sleep, you wake up tired. Sleep issues. You have difficulty falling asleep, staying asleep. You sleep for a couple hours and then you're awake the rest of the night. You don't feel refreshed after you sleep. And then headaches, muscle tension. So frequent aches in your neck, shoulders, back, that can be a key indicator. Frequent illness. So your whole immune system is just run down. And so you have more colds, infections, other ailments. Or appetite changes. So you're not hungry. You just don't have an appetite, or you just want to eat all the time. Then some emotional signs. So increased irritability, frustration. You just don't have patience with people. You get angry over the smallest little things. Or you have this growing anxiety inside of you. You're just constantly on edge, constantly wanting to avoid or run. Or you have a low mood, kind of early signs of depression. There's a bit more hopelessness, a bit of apathy, just not feeling very positive. Or a detachment, a sense of emotional numbness. You just don't feel. Or you just want to withdraw from people. You just don't want to be around anything. Or feelings of inadequacy, just growing self-doubt, growing feelings of failure, even in successful moments. Or you cry at the drop of a hat. All of a sudden you just watch a commercial on TV and you're bawling. Like, that's not your normal. There's something going on emotionally that you just don't have the normal emotional responses. And then for many, there's some cognitive changes that are happening as well. So you get a brain fog. You have trouble processing stuff, thinking of words. It's like you're walking in wet cement. Your brain is fuzzy and you have trouble concentrating, difficulty focusing on tasks, frequently losing your train of thought. Memory problems. You forget or struggle with stuff that happened just yesterday. Just your memory isn't as sharp as it normally is. Or now you're more indecisive. You just have trouble with choices and you often feel very paralyzed in knowing how to make a choice and what's the right choice. Or you become more negative in your thinking. You dwell on worst case scenarios. You find fault with everything. You catastrophize. You're just very critical of everything. You just get in that very negative mindset. And then there's some indicators in your behavior. So you tend to start procrastinating. You avoid tasks, even very simple ones. You're just not motivated to do anything. Or you start withdrawing from friends and family and colleagues. You just isolate more. You don't want to be with people. Or you avoid going to work. How can I get out of work? So you call in sick more frequently, or you show up late or leave early if possible. Or some go to the other extreme and they just push themselves, drive themselves, and they overwork. So now it's almost like I feel guilty. I'm so tired and I haven't been doing my job as well as I should. So I now need to drive myself, and they just work long hours in a robotic way. Or they start neglecting self-care. I'm going to stay up all night and work, and then they don't sleep, they don't eat, they don't exercise, they don't relax. They're unable to relax. Something just won't release inside of them and let go so they can relax. Then some relational indicators. So increased conflict in your relationships, more arguments, more tension is happening in relationships. We've talked about more irritability, but now there's some more anger outbursts happening. Then many just don't want physical intimacy anymore, or they want it all the time. Or you avoid problems. You just don't want to deal with anything. You just don't have the energy to deal with anything. So you really go into this avoid approach to life. Or you isolate. You just start pulling inward, withdrawing from others, not wanting to connect, not wanting to be present. And you become just very isolated internally, and then you isolate yourself in relationships and social settings. Some develop a real resentment within relationships. You feel unappreciated. You feel overburdened by that your friends don't have your back, your friends aren't supporting you properly, and you develop a real resentment. Then there's decreased performance and engagement. And so there's just this lack of motivation starts settling in. You just don't have the energy. So you lose enthusiasm for tasks often that once inspired you. And that results in reduced productivity. You just struggle to complete tasks. You can start stuff, but just can't get around to finishing it. Or you just develop this total disinterest in work, in all the hobbies that you used to enjoy. And then again, you procrastinate. And then just greater and greater cynicism. So you're just growing in this negativity, pessimism. You just see the worst in situations, the worst in life, the worst in people. You disengage, you become very sarcastic and even hostile about life and about people and about relationships. So there's just this growing negative cynicism. I want to talk about what causes burnout. So I'm going to look at it at 3 levels. So I'm going to start with what people talk about, and it's the external circumstances. Then I'm going to go below that, and then down to the complex trauma stuff that really, in my mind, sets up people to burn out. But let's look at what people would say are external circumstances, and these definitely contribute. These definitely feed into leading to burnout. So they do need to be talked about. So work-related. So if you're in a toxic work environment where office politics, there's bullying, there's poor management, that's going to take its toll and wear you down and could lead to burnout. Or if you're in a work environment where there's an excessive workload, where you're expected to work 60, 80 hours a week, you have unrealistic deadlines placed on you, and then inadequate resources to do the work asked of you. That's going to wear you out. Or if you're in an environment where you lack control in making decisions, so everybody else is making decisions for you, and you can't say no to that, that's going to wear you out. Or if you're in an environment where there's unclear expectations, so just here's a very general job, do it, and nobody gives you clear guidance and you're afraid to ask, that's just going to take its toll on you. Or if you're in an environment where you're really working hard but nobody's appreciating it, nobody's recognizing it, you feel undervalued, underappreciated, unnoticed, but yet there's this high expectation, and if you ever make a mistake, all of a sudden you're noticed, that's going to take its toll on you. Or if you're in an environment with poor working conditions, that's going to take its toll on you. Or if you're in an environment where there's just no resources to do your job, that's going to take its toll. Or if you're in a job that's very monotonous. You just repeat the same task over and over and over again, and it's not meaningful work. You feel like a robot. That's going to take its toll. Or if you're in a job where you're trying to do your job, but you're constantly being interrupted so that you're pulled in all these different directions and you can't do your job, that's going to take its toll. So work definitely plays a part. Then relationship stuff. So conflict not being resolved and more conflict than there is fun, that wears you down. Or caregiving responsibilities. You're a single mom or you're a stay-at-home mom and your partner's away a lot and you've got 4 children and there's a lot of responsibility. Or you've got elderly parents to take care of or loved ones with special needs. That gradually takes its toll. Or you're isolated, so you move to a different country or a different part of the country. You have no friends, no family. You just feel very much alone, no meaningful connections to help you. That takes its toll. And then there's an element of societal, cultural pressures that can feed into burnout. So economic pressure. You have to have a certain salary in order to pay rent, to buy food, but the cost of living keeps going up and you're struggling to meet your own basic needs. That takes its toll. Then there's societal expectations. So you go to certain neighborhoods and all the kids are involved in all the sports, all the extracurricular activities, and you feel that to fit in and be a part of that community, you need to get your kids involved in all of that stuff. Or you move into an area where everybody's got a boat and a cottage and a pool and all kinds of really nice things. And you feel, again, a pressure that you have to fit in by meeting these expectations that are very subtle, but they're there. Or for some people, we would call it a digital overload. You're constantly working on technology. You're constantly... That's part of your job, but then you do it to communicate to people, to connect with people. Then you do it for some entertainment. But the digital overload can take its toll on you. Then for others, you live in an environment where there is discrimination and inequity. There's racism, there's bias, there's unfair treatment. You're not included in stuff. You're looked down on. You're not given fair treatment. That takes its toll. And then for others, they're in a war zone and life is just bombs and bullets and it's a scary, scary world, and that takes its toll. So that's kind of the external environment, and it does contribute to it because all of those things, if you look at them, they add to stress and they make your brain eventually start to feel overwhelmed and unsafe. And that's what leads to burnout. What's going on below the surface that's causing a person to not respond as well as they should to some of these external causes? Because many people will go through these external causes and never get burned out because they have tools and they have the underlying internal health to not be overwhelmed by it. So somebody has said there's kind of 8 types of people set up for burnout. So number 1 is the overgiver. You just give. Your needs don't matter. You just have to love people. They burn out. There's the overdoer. You accomplish. Your whole value comes from accomplishing stuff. That gets you validation. Then there's the overachiever, where you have to be better than everybody. You have to be top of your class, the best in your office. That can lead to burnout. Then there's the overthinker. You got to figure out every problem. You got to anticipate every problem. Your brain is constantly obsessing and working on stuff. Then there's the micromanager. You got to make sure every detail is under control, is the way it should be, so that there's no failures, so that you don't get hurt, so that there's nothing unexpected that happens. The micromanager. Then the perfectionist. You got to do everything perfectly to think you're good enough to get respect. Then the workaholic. All your value comes from your job. And so you must work to prove how valuable you are and get validation. and then the people pleaser. Your value comes from other people liking you, other people being pleased with you doing what they want. So as you can see, all of those, if those are true of you, then you get in external environments and you got problems because you can't say no. You can't turn your brain off. You can't just say, hey, I'm only going to work these amount of hours. No, I got to prove my worth. So there's something going on below the surface that's causing people to be overgivers, to be overdoers, to be overachievers, to be overthinkers, to be micromanagers. And that's the complex trauma stuff. But before I go on to that, let me just put it kind of this way. If you take the underlying issues, what you see is a person who has chronic stress issues, a person who possibly has codependency issues, which leads to compassion fatigue. So they're so exposed to other people's sufferings and they don't know how to detach from that, and it burns them out. Or they have boundary issues, so they don't know how to say no. They don't know how to set good boundaries or enforce boundaries. Or they don't know how to take care of themselves. They can meet everybody else's needs, but they don't know how to meet their own needs, or they feel guilty for meeting their own needs. So now we're getting to some of those core issues that come out of complex trauma. So let's go to this, because to me, it's complex trauma that creates those issues that then when you get in the external environments, you don't know how to handle properly, and then you burn out. So we've used this diagram before. So on the right is kind of healthy nervous system, healthy engagement with life. So the performance zone, you go into your sympathetic nervous system, it gives you energy to work hard, to do your job, but then you go to the blue, which is the recovery zone, where you go into your parasympathetic nervous system, and that brings rest, healing, rejuvenation, and now you have a very balanced, healthy life. Sympathetic nervous system, parasympathetic nervous system, working in balance, creating a very healthy life. You don't burn out. But then you come to the complex trauma side on the left. You're in constant stress, constant danger, constant overwhelm. So you're constantly in your sympathetic nervous system. You're not able to go to your parasympathetic nervous system because you're constantly in danger. You're constantly stressed. You got to stay in your sympathetic nervous system. So eventually, your only way your brain can find a way to survive is to burn out, to shut down. That's what's happening. It's the brain's last recourse to prevent you from killing yourself, to prevent you from just burning everything up. So let's just start refusing to cooperate. Let's go on strike. Let's shut her down. So let me just kind of break that down a little bit more. So as a person is in danger, stress, overwhelmed, they're in their sympathetic nervous system. But the brain is also releasing chemicals at that time to help give you extra energy. So it releases cortisol, adrenaline, and that gives you extra energy to fight, flight, to survive in that danger, stress zone. Some people actually then add other chemicals when they feel themselves getting tired, when they feel themselves wearing out. I just need more coffee. I just need more sugar. Their body begins digging into all of its energy reserves, trying to keep you going. So what you can see is you're trying to fuel this energy. You're trying to put stuff in the gas tank, but it's not healthy stuff. Your body is drawing on reserves that it has. You keep just pushing yourself, but never letting yourself rest, never letting yourself go to your parasympathetic nervous system. Now, it's important to understand is that a lot of people actually, there's something in them that likes this, digging deeper. They get a rush out of it. They feel in the zone when they dig deeper. And so they go along with this. Some people even get to the point where they're so tired, they're so exhausted that they now resort to drugs. So this is where people turn to crystal meth. they turn to cocaine. It gives them energy. It's a stimulant drug that helps them keep going. Okay, so that's happening. The body's burning out. You're doing everything you can to keep it going, but all of those are only hurting the body even more. The brain is basically saying this person is refusing to go into their parasympathetic nervous system, or they can't because life is too dangerous and stressful. I need to help. So the first thing the brain often does is it brings about depression. So depression is actually the brain trying to help a person get to their parasympathetic nervous system. I'm going to start kind of shutting down. I'm going to start numbing out. I'm going to take the motivation away from life to help you get to your parasympathetic nervous system. Sadly, for many people, they're depressed now, but they keep pushing themselves. No, I got to do this. I got to keep going. I got to keep going. So they ignore that, the brain's attempt to help them, and keep pushing. And so eventually the body then just goes on strike. We can't go anymore. We're exhausted. We're just falling apart. We're saying no. We quit. And that's burnout. The body is no longer cooperating with what the brain wants to do. So if you've gone through that and you've pushed yourself for a long time as you were getting warning signs that you were in trouble, but you kept pushing yourself, what then happened? So you've gone into not just burnout, but you've been living in trauma, in complex trauma for a long period of time. So there's a whole bunch of negative ramifications that come out of this. So number one is you created a default setting through all those years of being in an unsafe environment, a stress environment, an overwhelming environment where you were in your sympathetic nervous system all the time. That became your default setting. That became what feels normal. So now if you were to go to your parasympathetic nervous system, that just feels boring. That just feels dead. There's something in you that wants to go back to being in your sympathetic nervous system all the time because that feels alive. And so that's where people become addicted to chaos because that gets them back into their sympathetic nervous system and makes them feel alive. So that default setting is no longer a healthy balance between sympathetic and nervous system. Your default setting is now an out of balance nervous system, and that's dangerous. The second thing is, because of being in danger for so long in complex trauma, your stress system is now easily activated. So now in recovery, you can go through a situation and the slightest bit of increase in stress can send you right back into your sympathetic nervous system and start all of those other dynamics in motion. There's another thing that's happened through all of those years of doing that and that have led to burnout is that complex trauma has constantly created an internal message that I'm not good enough. I must be an imposter. I'm a failure. I'm a loser. I don't have value. Others are going to reject me if they see the real me. A shame belief develops. And that then actually causes people to have that next layer. So if you look at those 8 types of people, the people pleaser, the perfectionist, all of them are trying to solve shame. If I just work harder, I'll have value. If I'm an overachiever, I'll have value. If I please everybody, I'll have value. If I am perfect, I'll have value. If I overthink everything and figure everything out, then I'll have value. All of those are trying to solve shame. There's another default setting that I want you to understand. So you got a default setting of a sympathetic nervous system that's always activated. But with that, you got a default setting now of shame and a default setting of fear. Because of living in danger so long, I'm pretty sure something bad's going to happen. I'm pretty sure that the other shoe's going to drop. I'm going to fail. I'm going to get rejected. I'm going to get hurt. I'm going to get abandoned. I'm going to be disrespected. And so I'm constant anxiety about all the bad things that could happen because they happened in the past. They happened and caused my complex trauma. That anxiety takes a ton of emotional energy. Then there's another piece that comes out of complex trauma for a lot of people. And this was part of my burnout. And that was some bad teaching. So I was basically told that to be loving meant I never had any needs. I couldn't stand up for myself. I shouldn't take care of myself and do self-care because that was being selfish and self-centered. I needed to give, or I was not being a loving person. That was bad teaching. That was not actually teaching love. It was teaching codependency and calling it love. Also, I got teaching that if I relaxed, then I was being lazy. If I relaxed, I was being selfish. I needed to work, because that's what productive, healthy people do, is that solid work ethic. And so that teaching caused me to have false guilt whenever I took care of myself. It caused me to have false guilt whenever I said no to anybody. And so bad teaching can cause people to have false guilt, which then sets them up to be people pleasers, to do all of those 8 things. Another thing is, for some people, there's unresolved healthy guilt. So they have stolen and lied and cheated for years, but never owned it, never truly changed. And that's gnawing at them, that's eating away at them. That takes a lot of emotional energy and can contribute to burnout stuff. What I hope you see, it's complex trauma created some core issues that became default settings. Shame, fear, false guilt, true guilt. That, if it's not dealt with, will lead to people-pleasing, workaholism, those 8 characteristics. And then when you're in external environments in your adult life that are stressful, you won't be able to handle them properly and you burn out. So that 3 levels that all feed into burnout is so important to see.